I am Captain Clara Reynolds, 32 years old, in the United States Army. My wedding day should have been the happiest of my life, yet my stomach tightened as my father entered the venue. For 15 years, he had dismissed my service as a waste of talent. Straightening my dress uniform, I drew a steady breath and silently hoped today might be different. I didn't know he would use this moment to humiliate me, or that my husband-to-be would defend me in a way that left him speechless. Before I tell you what happened, let me know where you're tuning in from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up to family. I grew up in Briar Hill, Massachusetts, an affluent suburb outside Boston where worth was measured in square footage and professional prestige. My father, Harold Reynolds, was a corporate lawyer who built his name defending major corporations. He worked 70-hour weeks and expected his children to follow the same blueprint for success. Our 5-bedroom colonial with its manicured lawn was his proof of victory. My mother, Margaret, was the perfect corporate spouse, hosting dinners, serving on charity boards, never contradicting him in public. In private, she sometimes whispered encouragement, but always laced with a warning: don't upset your father. My older brother, Peter, was the golden child. 3 years ahead of me, he checked every box my father valued: boarding school, Harvard business, a consulting job with a global firm. Every step he took earned approval and praise, and then there was me. While the neighborhood girls played house with dolls, I was climbing trees and leading capture-the-flag battles in the street. By 10, I was running before dawn every morning. My bedroom walls held posters of astronauts and Olympic athletes, not boy bands. My father called it a phase. She's just a tomboy. She'll grow out of it when she notices. Boys, he told his golf buddies. I never did. By middle school, I was on every sports team open to girls, thriving most in track and field. Coaches pointed out my natural leadership, how I strategized plays and kept the team motivated. The first major blow-up came when I was 16. Over dinner, I announced I wanted to apply to West Point. The table fell silent. My father set down his fork and stared as if I had said I planned to run away and join the circus. The military is for people who can't make it in the real world, he said coldly. It's a fallback for those without the brains or the network to land a real career. No child of mine is going to throw away her potential like that. My mother kept her eyes on her plate. Peter shot me a sympathetic glance, but said nothing. That night set the tone for years to come. My accomplishments met with dismissal, my medals invisible. Meanwhile, Peter's smallest achievements were celebrated with dinners and bragging phone calls. My mother's attempts to bridge the gap were quiet and cautious, slipping me articles about women in uniform, sneaking me to a lecture by a female general, but always ending with, "Your father means well, he just has a specific idea of success." By senior year, family dinners were silent affairs except for talk of Peter's career prospects. When my West Point acceptance letter came, I waited 2 weeks before telling them. "This is a mistake you'll regret," my father said, pushing back from the table. "If you're determined to learn the hard way, don't expect me to bankroll it." That night my mother quietly slipped me a check. "For expenses, I believe in you," she whispered, "even if I can't say it out loud." Leaving home that summer, I knew I wasn't just choosing a career, I was choosing a life my father would never understand or respect. West Point was both terrifying and exhilarating. Surrounded by cadets from across the country, many from long military lineages, I stood in my crisp uniform on day 1 with my mother by my side. My father had a critical meeting that day. Training was grueling, pre-dawn runs, demanding academics, and unrelenting discipline. I questioned my choice often during Beast Barracks, the 7-week cadet initiation, but I thrived. By sophomore year, I was in the top 10% of my class. When I called home with the news, my mother congratulated me warmly. My father said, "That's nice, but real-world success is different from playing soldier." 4 years later, I graduated with honors. My mother cried. Peter hugged me and whispered, "I'm proud of you." My father shook my hand as if I were a client. As a second lieutenant, I was assigned to an engineering unit. 18-hour days were the norm, and I threw myself into proving my worth, not for my father anymore, but for myself and the soldiers whose lives depended on my decisions. Deployment made everything real. On my first tour in the Middle East, I led a team rebuilding schools and restoring water systems in hostile regions. The work was dangerous, requiring both technical expertise and careful diplomacy with local officials. I was awarded a Bronze Star for leading my team through a high-risk operation without casualties. When I called home with the news, my mother's voice trembled with pride and worry. My father said, "I suppose they hand those out pretty often these days." Over time, my support system came from within the military. Commanders who mentored me, fellow officers who understood the sacrifices and challenges. I made captain ahead of schedule. My father's reaction? "De partner at 30. How does your salary compare?" At home, holiday dinners were verbal minefields. My father introduced me to his colleagues as my daughter who's still figuring things out in the army. The words still always hung in the air like a judgment. Peter sometimes asked about my work in private, but around my father, he stayed silent. The lowest point came when I overheard my father tell a business associate that both his children were in finance. That night I confronted him. "So I'm no longer your daughter?" "Don't be dramatic, Clara. But what am I supposed to tell people? That my daughter is wasting her Harvard-level mind taking orders in uniform?" "You could tell them the truth. That I'm a captain in the United States Army responsible for 64 soldiers and millions in equipment." He just stared at me, baffled. Why would anyone choose that when they could have had so much more? It was then I realized we were speaking different languages. His measure of success, status, and wealth would never align with mine: service, duty, and leadership. By my third year as captain, I met Ethan Walker. He joined my unit as a first lieutenant. At first, we interacted strictly professionally. He was competent, calm under pressure, and quietly confident. Our first real conversation outside of duty was after a tough training exercise. "That flanking maneuver you suggested saved us at least half an hour," I told him. "My grandfather taught me chess when I was a kid," he said. "Always think 3 moves ahead. It works in the field, too." From there, our friendship grew into something deeper. Ethan never flinched at my rank or achievements. He listened. He understood. He came from a long military family, his father a career officer, his mother a nurse in the service. After months of careful boundary keeping and open disclosure to our superiors, we began dating. Ethan supported my career completely, saw its worth, and made me feel seen in a way my father never had. Meeting Ethan's family felt like stepping into another world. His parents welcomed me warmly, his father greeting me as Captain Reynolds before switching to Clara at my invitation, his mother sharing stories of her own service in the medical corps. For the first time, I felt what it was like to have parental pride directed at my military achievements. One evening, sitting on his porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, I admitted, "My father thinks I'm wasting my life. He's never once told me he's proud of anything I've done." Ethan took my hand. "Then he's missing out on knowing an extraordinary woman and officer. His loss, not yours." 18 months later, he proposed during a weekend trip to San Diego. The ring was simple, sapphire instead of diamond. "Blue for loyalty and truth," he said. "The qualities I admire most in you." We set the wedding date for June the following year. We flew to Massachusetts so Ethan could meet my parents. My mother embraced him immediately. My father, as I expected, was cool but civil. In his office, with its wall of framed diplomas and corporate awards, but not a single photo of me, Ethan asked for his blessing. "And what are your prospects, Lieutenant?" my father said, leaning back. "How will you provide for a family on a military salary?" "We both serve because we believe in something greater than financial gain," Ethan replied evenly. "I can promise to honor your daughter, support her career, and build a life based on mutual respect." "Her career," my father repeated with a scoff. "Playing soldier isn't a career." I started to speak, but Ethan touched my arm gently. "With all due respect, sir, Clara is an exceptional officer who's earned every promotion through courage and merit. I consider myself fortunate to have met her." My father looked between us, then shrugged. "You'll do what you want regardless of my opinion." It was as close to approval as he'd give. As the wedding approached, I decided to wear my dress uniform instead of a traditional gown. Ethan didn't hesitate. Be yourself. That's who I'm marrying. The morning of the wedding, my father was late, blaming traffic. He gave me a formal hug and said, "You look nice, Clara." I wanted to believe it was a step forward, but during the reception, I watched him drink steadily, champagne, then whiskey, then wine. The tension grew as his voice carried louder across the room. I tried to focus on greeting guests and sharing the day with people who truly supported us. Then it happened. He approached while I was speaking with two senior officers who had served with me overseas. "Influential," he said after hearing them praise my work. "I doubt that very much. Don't mind her. She's just army trash, not a real combat officer, I imagine." The air froze. My mother stopped in her tracks, hand over her mouth. My face burned, but before I could speak, Ethan appeared at my side. Ethan's expression was calm, but unshakable. "Sir, with all due respect, that army trash is my commanding officer." My father blinked, clearly not understanding. "You're the groom." "Yes, sir. Lieutenant Ethan Walker, United States Army. Your daughter, Captain Clara Reynolds, has been my CO for the past 2 years. She's one of the most respected leaders in our division. She was nominated for the Meritorious Service Medal for developing civilian protection protocols adopted across multiple operations." For once, my father was silent. His gaze flicked from Ethan to me, then to the ribbons and medals on my uniform. "You command him?" "Yes," I said evenly, "and every decoration on this uniform was earned in the field." He stepped back, wine glass trembling in his hand. Then, in a clumsy moment that shattered his polished image, he took a sip, inhaled sharply, and sprayed red wine down his expensive suit. He muttered something about needing to clean up and left the ballroom. Colonel Hayes, one of my mentors, placed a hand on my shoulder. "Your husband's right, Captain. You're one of the finest officers I've served with." Major Lopez nodded. "The lieutenant's a lucky man." My mother approached, eyes full of regret. "Clara, I'm so sorry. I never thought he'd say something like that in public." But I knew better. It was the first time he'd just said it in front of witnesses. I told her quietly, "It's fine, Mom. At least it's out in the open now." Later, over breakfast the next morning, my father offered a stiff, non-committal apology. "If you were offended." For the first time, I didn't let it slide. I wasn't offended. I was hurt. And I can't keep pretending this doesn't matter. When he tried to argue, I told him plainly I needed space until he could respect me and my choices. My mother cried, but I didn't back down. Months passed. With Ethan's encouragement and a military counselor's guidance, I began to understand that my father's inability to see my worth didn't define it. Surprisingly, he reached out, admitting Ethan was right, that he had been dismissive because he didn't understand my world. It wasn't perfect, but it was more than I had ever expected. 6 months later, he had a heart attack. Sitting in his hospital room, he looked smaller, older. For the first time, he admitted, "I wasn't the father you deserved. I couldn't see the value in you, or path. That was my failure, not yours." Slowly, we rebuilt. It was halting and imperfect. Moments of backsliding mixed with genuine change. The turning point came when he attended a ceremony honoring my unit, stood in the family section, and greeted me afterward with, "Congratulations, Captain Reynolds. No sarcasm, no qualifiers. We may never have the bond some daughters have with their fathers, but we've found mutual respect, and I've learned the most important lesson of all. Your worth is not measured by who recognizes it. It's measured by living it."